So direct light versus indirect light. So today we are going to be photographing in here with all of the studio lighting. But how many are really comfortable with studio lighting? Okay. Some people, and how many people, on the contrary, prefer studio light, and actually more uncomfortable with natural lighting? Okay, yeah, that's what I found really interesting, because I started off natural light first, so then strobes and flash intimidated me. But then I realized that equally there were photographers who started in the studio and were used to having full control of the lighting, and then going outside made them nervous because now they suddenly can't control and they can't dial down the sun. So I'm going to address both, but at the end of the day, light is just light. It actually doesn't matter if it's coming from the sun or if it's coming from a strobe. It's going to react the same way, and your camera's going to read it the same way. It's just how you manipulate it and how you position things, the angles that you choose to position the light relative to your camera and your subject. So direct light versus indirect light. So this one here is a window facing north at my house. Okay, so photographing some stuff just as a sample, right? But you can see here, direct or indirect? Indirect. Yeah, it's indirect. The sun's not actually shining into the window, right? So this one is you can see the sun out there, but it's not shining in the window. So this is indirect light. Versus this is the window on the south side of my house. So now you have direct light. And so the difference that's created, what do you notice the difference between the indirect window light versus the direct light?
The shadows.
Yeah, shadows. How about the colors? What do you think of?
Indirect's a little more flat.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say there's
It's not bad flat. It's just, yeah.
Right. So I wouldn't say that there's one that's better than the others. It really would come down to when you're photographing the products. So we do have fun sample products that you can pretend to shoot and practice with later. You want to ask yourself, how much of a shadow do I want in this? So this one, I didn't use any reflectors because I could have had. Can you tell which way the light's coming from on this one?
Probably down.
It's this way. It's coming that way.
Yeah.
You can see it on the plate.
Yeah, look at the shadows. Where are they falling? Right. So it's kind of coming this way. So that's why you see a little bit of the shadows there. I like a little bit of shadow. I think it gives dimension. But then it comes down to how much shadow you want. So this one, I didn't use a reflector at all. But had I put a white reflector here, I could have filled in the shadows more if I didn't want so much shadow. This one, on the other hand, similar. Light is also coming more like this way, right? Because you see the shadows falling that way. They're harsher shadows. It gives a different vibe. So when you're playing around later today, know that there's not a good or a bad lighting. It's just how much shadows do you want in there. Would give different look to it. So if you want to soften the light, so we'll start with soft lighting first. This is especially helpful if you're trying to create beauty shots. Something that's more either professional headshots, not anything too harsh and contrasty, but just, nice and beautiful, pretty. So if you think about rooms with really beautiful light, this is what made me start thinking about which rooms in my house have the best light? And have you noticed what do think about the room that has the best light to you, the best natural light to you. What do they have in common? The windows, what else?
Usually white in this, in your big photos, at least.
White walls, yeah. that's what I noticed too. Like I noticed that some people like will think that, oh, like skylights will do just fine too. Like, oh, this is like a house this is a room that's in the middle of my house, but I put windows like on the roof. But why is that not the same?
It's like when you're trying to take a beauty shot, the light coming from the top it has like really weird shadows.
Yeah, exactly. So not all light is, the direction of the light matters is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So if it's actually side lit, it's more flattering and you get more bounce all around. So if the light's coming straight down, you're going to get, see, this is...
Actually, I was going to say it's happening to you right now.
Yeah, this is really unflattering light. So I usually would avoid standing. I would strategically stand here. So you can see now it's more front lighting. The light's more front lighting me versus directly coming down.
You know, drag queens say never turn on overhead like that.
Yes, yeah. So typically when I go into a room, I will kill all the overhead lights. It's just not flattering. And I see we have windows here too. So if we just opened up the windows, we would get a lot more flattering light versus these overhead lights right now. But yeah, typically the lights are coming from the side, hopefully like windows, typically white walls, because if you have white walls, what's happening to the light? Yep, lots of fill light happening there and bouncing all around, right? So I took this concept, and when I'm trying to create soft lit portraits, I'm essentially trying to recreate this tiny white room. So, for example, this was a little baby that I was photographing. And if you want really soft light, one is avoid colored lighting. What's colored lighting? It could be from a lamp. It could be, so if you have like tungsten light bulbs or fluorescent light bulbs, right now you're getting a lot of different temperature lights. I would kill them. I would stick with just one temperature. And if there's a window or a softbox, stick with just that one and kill the other lights. Unless if I am photographing, say like lifestyle in a house, and I'm trying to get like, let's say a realtor photo of someone who's sitting in like a cool looking living room, I like lights in the background. So lamps, any of that. I just don't want it on their faces because their faces would mess up it's really hard to white balance later if you have a mix of tungsten light, fluorescent light, your daylight, right? It's hard to balance all that out later. So I would keep the lighting on their face to be one temperature, but background stuff is good because that adds ambiance to your photos. Same thing if you're at a wedding. If you're at a wedding and let's say you're photographing people during the dance, the reception. Let's say the DJ brought all these colorful lights that are shining on people. I would avoid having those colorful lights on people's faces. The background is great. It adds a lot of ambiance, but use a flash to overpower any of those weird lights that might be on their faces. Get as close to either the window or the softbox as possible. We'll talk a little bit more about why later. If the light is too harsh, then consider diffusing it. So what are ways you can diffuse the light? Yeah, you can use a handheld diffuser, like the little pop-up one. You can also, if it's a window, you can pull over. Yeah, sheer curtains are great. I have a bunch at my house, my home studio. I have a bunch of sheer curtains just on tension rods that I could just throw up when needed and take down when I don't want them. If it's a softbox, then the actual diffuser itself. But I've also used just like parchment paper or tissue paper if I just need a quick fix for something. And then the last tip is to use reflectors if you need to soften up some of the shadows on the other side. But that's kind of like the quick summary. But yeah, with this was shot in my LA studio, and it was right next to a window. Can you guess where the window was? Look at where the shadows are.
Left is brighter.
Yeah, you can kind of see here, like, right where the shadows are falling, and this side is darker than this side. Yeah, so there was the big window on this side, and even that is important to me because when I first started, for example, if the window was here, I would sometimes, and I learned this the hard way, I had the baby positioned like this with the head here. But now if I did that, where's the light? The light's coming straight down her head now. And then I just turned it into this situation here. Do you see? So by rotating and making sure that the light's always coming from the side, it's a lot more flattering. And then I had a reflector on this side.
That was what I was going to ask. This is like, there had to be some bouncing back because that side is so bright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would have either like a big white pillow. With weddings, a lot of times you'll find yourself in ugly hotel rooms and trying to take a picture of their shoes or something like that. And I would just grab pillows from the bed or a bed sheet or something just to act as the reflector. One thing to know about me is I'm very minimal with my gear. I usually just bring one body, one lens. To any portrait shoots is just one body, one lens. Weddings, obviously, I have to pack more of a kit. But for most portraits and commercial shoots, it's just one body, one lens. I will have a strobe and a reflector, and that's like enough. Yeah.
What lens do you usually choose?
It depends on what I'm shooting, but for portraits and commercial work lately, for like the last few years, I would say 95% of my stuff is done on the GFX with a 45 to 100 millimeter f4 lens. So that one gives me like a nice range. The 45, gives me a wide enough angle when I need it. But the 100 also, if I need to do a portrait, it's nice enough. F4 because it's full frame. The f4 will look more like 2.8 or something on like a Canon, for example. Mm-hmm. So I find that that's like a very versatile setup for me. If I am going for like those really soft focused stuff, then my lens of choice would be like either the 80 millimeter f1.7. That one is like super dreamy. Did we bring any of those today?
Yeah, they're there.
Yes. So play around with the 8, and then there's also the 55 too. The 80 and the 55 f1.7. But the 80, if you want a lot of bokeh and you want to play around, with that photo that I had of that girl earlier with the leaf and only the leaf was in focus but her face was blurry, that was with the 81.7. So play around with that later. Those are fun. Okay, so one thing to note is avoid color casting. Like, these are really hard to edit later. One thing that I do when I show up to photo shoots, especially if I know I'm going to have to get close to my subjects, I don't come in colored clothes. Like, I'm looking at your bright red shirt. If you come close to your subjects in a red shirt like that, it's going to reflect red light onto your photo. Same thing if you photograph them on grass. Watch out for the green color cast that's going to come up on their face. I preferably come in white. If I'm looking, especially if I want like the soft portraits, if I'm creating soft portraits, I will wear white because I will become a natural reflector, right? The closer I get to them, like I'm bouncing more white light back on their face. So just being mindful and paying attention to it because otherwise it's really hard to color correct after. One tip I have if you are, let's say, photographing on grass, let's say that this is like sidewalk and grass, I will have them stand more like right here. Just enough so that when I frame it, it looks like infinite grass, but it's actually the cement that's coming up on their face. Because if you have them like further into the grass, you're going to get a lot of green coming up, and like all of the shadows that normally are here will have like a green tint to them. So, and I know especially on weddings, a lot of people will be like, oh, like look at that big grassy lawn. Let's go take a picture on the big grassy lawn. And then afterwards, everyone comes back and it's like a green tint everywhere. And you couldn't edit it, but you know, the goal is to minimize the amount of editing we have to do after. It makes your life a lot easier. Okay, so this is another example of mixed lighting. Can you kind of see how the left side of the picture is a different temperature than the right side of the picture? Yeah. Any ideas how that happened?
Red wall to the left.
Yeah. And oh yeah, you can see that. Any other ideas of how this can happen? Let's say you're in a hotel room, and like how might this happen if you're photographing wedding rings inside a hotel room?
Whatever the decor is, like some hotels have like wallpaper, carpets, stuff like that. Yeah, artwork, I don't know.
Yeah, it could be bouncing off of the artwork, could be bouncing off the carpet, weird colored walls. It could also be mixed lighting too. So for example, this one, if you can tell, I turned on my house lights, which is a very different temperature than the outside light. So now I have from this side, like some kind of yellowish tungsten light coming in. And then I have natural light coming in on the other side. You could make it an artistic choice as well, but if you do, you know, sometimes like you could have like blue light coming from one side, red light coming from another side, right? But that's like intentional, and it's more dramatic, right? This one is just kind of like a weird in between, not having intentions with that. So this one is the results of that. You have the overhead lights, my tungsten overhead light on this side, and the window light coming from this side. And so now you have very different temperatures. If this happens by mistake, you can fix it in post, kind of. Like if you use the gradient tool, you can add a mask and then try to fix this side a little bit. But if you have the option to turn off the overhead light, just do that. Yeah, it would be a lot easier for your editing. But yeah, that is what happens if you have two different color temperatures hitting your subjects at the same time. So that second tip that I gave you earlier was get closer to the source, the light source, if you want softer light. The reason is, let's take this softbox for an example, right? I mean, it could equally be the sun as well. So, well, you can see it, right? Okay. So if I am here and wanting that to shine on me, the further I get from it, the smaller it is to me now. Do you see that, right? The sun is a similar way. Like the sun is like really, like, I mean, the sun is like that to us, right? I know the sun is big, but when we're looking at the sun is like that. That's why the sun is so harsh, because it's actually a very small light source. The further I get, the smaller it is relative to me now, right? So then it eventually becomes almost like harsh, almost like a spotlight that's on me. But the closer I get to it, the bigger and bigger it's getting now. If I am right here, it's bigger than my head now, right? So now it's become a big light source. So you can see when the light's coming out, it's actually wrapping around me now. So now I'm actually getting some light coming in front of me and some of the lights also coming from behind me. So the closer I get to this, the bigger the light source gets and the more it wraps around me. But the further I get from it, the more it becomes like a pin spot on me, and it's going to look more and more harsh. So with your same thing when you're photographing your subjects, if you want a softer light, bring it closer to the light source. If you want more of that pin spotlight, the harsh shadows, then bring it further from them. So back to the point of there's no good or bad, it's what you're trying to create. There's no right or wrong here. this is an example where I pulled it away from the window, right? So we're, I'd say maybe, I don't know, 3-4 feet away from the window, but I want you to see what a difference it makes. So the one on the left is right against the window, and then the one on the right, I pulled it away from the window. But you see now, like, the
autumn shoot instead of the spring shoot.
yeah, right, yeah, gave it a totally different mood to this too. But also, like, the light just doesn't wrap around the objects as well. So that's something to keep in mind when you're playing around later. But again, there's like a nice, the other thing you have to consider is the closer you get to the light source, the more intense it gets too. So you may have to dial down the intensity as when you get it really close. Okay. If the light is too harsh, you can add a diffuser to it. So there's two things you can do. If you find that the light is hitting your thing a little bit too harsh, you can either diffuse the light that is coming in, or you can add a reflector to come back on it. So I wanted to show you in this example here, again, shooting more flowers, I actually did both. There was actually like I don't know if you could, this is like just standard paper towel. I just taped it to the window just to add a little bit of diffusion, because there was like a hot spot coming in from it. And so this allowed it to just be softer when it came in. But it's just not toilet paper, paper towel. A paper towel roll taped to the wall. This one was like a tablecloth, like a cheap plastic tablecloth that I found covering one of our tables. And I was like, okay, great, that will work. And to add a little bit of reflection back on this bouquet. And you can see the difference here. The one on the left, I took it without any assistance. And the one on the right had the diffusion and the reflector both happening at the same time. But you can see the shadows aren't as harsh once I added the reflector in. And then the highlights weren't as harsh either. Without the diffusion and the reflection, you had much harsher highlights and much darker shadows, right? But this one now, it softens out a little bit. So again, not one is better than the other, but I'm giving you the rules for how to create softer light, and then you can reverse engineer that if you want the harsher light after. This one kind of gives you like the differences between all the things that we just experimented, ties it all together. So the one on the left is direct window light shining right on the subjects. The one in the middle is the window light, but I diffused it. And then this one, took it a step further and also added a reflector to it. So they're really subtle, like especially, but that's kind of the nice thing about a reflector and why it looks so natural is that you're not doing drastic things to it. It's just a very subtle fill that you're adding. And if you just look at the little bit of the shadows, you can see that it's just a little, like the less defined, right? Like you have your most defined shadows over there, and then they get less and less defined as you move over. But the idea that I want you to remember is whether you prefer natural light or studio light, the light behaves the same way. Like the relationship to the light will be the same, whether it's the sun or the softbox. Okay, so now when you're creating good light with artificial light, it is essentially, like I was just saying, the same thing, but instead of working with the sun or the window, you're now using with a strobe. So the artificial light behaves the same as natural light. You're also going to want to watch out for colored lighting. So if you're going to have a strobe, then you also want to make sure about the light in the room at the time. There's two ways you can do it. One is you can either kill the ambient light based on your exposure, or you could turn it off. And then just like the window, the closer the strobe is to your subject, the larger the light source will be, the more wrapping it will do around, so the softer it will be. The bigger the light source, the softer the light. Yeah.
This is going to probably be what is a strobe exactly relative, like rather than like a light box, or are they the same?
Yeah, same. I mean, the strobe is typically referring to like the light itself, like the flash itself. The softbox is like the big.
Yeah, I know what that's. So like
Okay.
the flash is the strobe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Versus like continuous lights,
Okay.
like that just stays on all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the rules for diffusing and reflecting also works the same. Okay, so what you will want to watch out for is also colored lighting. So you can see this was inside, like I feel like it's like a typical wedding, right? If I tried to take a picture of my food here, I was holding like a little light source, but if I didn't have that on, you can see like it would just be all purple lights, right? Same thing if I was taking pictures of people in that, people would have like a purple light to them. But if you can have a light, like a white light that's shining on whatever your subject is, then you can now make this have a lot cleaner light. You notice I was okay with all the yellow ambient light in the background, but that yellow ambient light was not hitting my subject because I had a stronger light source closer to it. Then that one basically overpowered any of the yellow lights that were hitting my subjects. So you'll want to consider that today as well. So like, for example, anyone who's photographing in this bay here, you may not want this light coming right down on your subject, something to consider. But I do see nice window lights coming in potentially from the side that you might be able to play with, or just use the strobes. So keep the light source as close. You can see the light source is right there, right? The closer you get, the bigger the light source gets. So that was just kind of an example of that. The bigger the light source, the softer your light's going to be. So you can see for this one, I set up like I believe we're going to have V-flats for them later. Yeah, so you can use the V-flats to create reflections for you. You're trying to create, especially if you want soft portraits, you're going to want to create that little white room that we were talking about earlier, right? So you can use the V-flat to help create that little white room effect. Block out the ugly light, reflect back the nice clean light from your strobe. This one, I think you said you had? Yeah, so
Bring it, pledge.
yeah, perfect. But this one is basically like a little light cube. Like what it does inside is it just bounces all the lights that come. I've created that little white room for my product. So I can stick something in there, and then now all the light that's coming in, it acts like the little white room. There's a lot of lights bouncing around inside. So this one like both diffuse the light coming in and also reflect the light that was inside it as well. And to give you an idea, the photo on the left was direct light. So I had the flash shining right on the objects. And then this one was when I stuck it inside that little light box where you had a lot of where the light was diffused and a lot of reflection. So this one kind of reminds me of like that indirect window effect, right? Where you had a lot of fill light in. Shadows are soft on here, and then that one is the direct light, where you get a lot of harsh shadows. So when you're photographing your products later, you can consider that and see which effect you were trying to create. And I was just comparing. It's the same thing as what happened with the window when we had direct light versus when we had the diffused light. Soft shadows, hard shadows. What do you notice about this lighting? Like the difference between the two lighting? How it?
Harsh.
Yeah.
fall directly overhead, almost being down on it. So it's more soft to use.
Yeah. Well, similarities and different. Like, when do you think these were taken? Yeah, both were actually taken right in the middle of the day. You can look how small their shadow is. The bride and groom. That's like not much of a shadow at all. It's coming right down on them. So what I chose to do with them is I chose to front light them in that case. They were relatively small, and even still, even though it was pretty much coming straight down, you could still find an angle that is a little bit more front lit or backlit than others. So I chose the side that's a little bit more front light. So you could see the faces are pretty evenly lit. So I was okay with that. This one, however, I chose the slight angle that made her a little bit backlit. So you can see, right, this is all on the shaded side, but there's still light coming through like that. But at least the most important part of her was evenly lit. Yeah.
So for example, this photo on the left, let's say this wedding, you're not trying to you're trying to figure things out before you get them out there. So would you just kind of look at the building or like your background to decide which side you want to put?
Have you guys done the hand trick? Yeah, so I would just go out there with my hand and I just kind of walk around. I mean, you can even try right now with your own hand and you can see how the shadow changes on your hand. So typically for wedding or portraits, I'm looking for more flattering light. So I want least amount of shadows. Like I don't want, harsh shadows coming between. Right? These lines here kind of represent what will happen like under here. Yeah. Yeah. This one was also taken pretty much just right at noon. But you can see I chose slightly different angles with them. So the one on the left, I chose a little bit more bit of backlight that I could, a little bit of a side light, right? Those lights coming. But their faces were all within the shadow. However, the one on the right, I just put them in full sun and exposed for full sun. Does anybody know the difference between the exposure difference between full sun and backlight? The quick trick, it's a 3-stop difference. Do you know what I mean by stop? Yeah. So if you just change it 3 stops, so I don't even have to remeasure, take a new light reading or check my settings. I just know if I'm going from backlight to front light, it's a 3-stop difference. But yeah, this one you get a lot more bold, crisp colors, harsher shadows. That one you get a little bit more of a dreamy, washed out.
So you don't have any auxiliary lighting on either one of these?
I am so minimalist, AKA lazy. I have a funny story related to that, by the way. I was hired by a big time, Emmy-winning producer to photograph her family. And so when I showed up to her nice, mansion, I showed up with my little camera bag, one GFX, one lens. My other one had just my little, my strobe and my little softbox, to go. Just little, small, it's small enough to fit under the plane, what do you call it, my personal item, you know what I mean? I didn't even have to throw it in the overhead bin, right? And so I show up, and then she's frantic with her new baby, and she's like, oh, let me get people to come help you with all your stuff. And I was like, oh no, I got everything. And I gotta say, I was nervous about photographing her because I knew, and at the time, her show was one of the biggest shows on TV at the time. So I was really nervous about photographing her. So take that, that insecurity into effect, okay? So I show up like that, and she's like, oh, do you need any help? Let me send people to get your stuff. And I'm like, oh, no, this is it. And then she's like, I was like, oh. And then I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to question if I'm legit. And then she's like, oh, you're efficient. I was like, That's right. But yeah, no, she loved the images, hired me like to shoot more stuff for her afterwards. But it just goes to show like you don't need all the big fancy stuff. If you know how to work light and manipulate the situation and strategically choose the right locations and stuff, like you can do a lot with very minimal footprint. All right, so this one is another example of just being in not the ideal time of day to be photographing a beauty shot. And so this one I chose to just go with the front light and just get the big blue sky and big blue ocean with her. But as long as you make sure that the key parts are pretty much evenly lit, right? So she's front light as opposed to side light. So that's why her face is pretty even. This one, what's the difference between the left and the right?
Left is bright.
Yeah, which one's front lit?
The left.
Yeah. Yep. So you can see the one on the left with the front light, the sky is blue, right? The colors are a little bit more like vibrant. The one on the right is backlit, and it's a little bit more washed out. The colors are a little bit more washed out. But you can see it's like different looks I'm going for, right? One trick is if you are going to be photographing with light coming into your lens like that, you are going to get haze, and it's going to look muddy. But if you noticed, I used this brim right here just to cover the sun just enough so that it wasn't too much light coming into my lens. And then that way it reduced the amount of haze and muddiness that it gave. Just the,
Was it an overcast day also when you shot that?
No,
Or-
full
Oh,
sun.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them were full sun, but one I let the sun shine on their face, and this one the sun was behind her. But it was like just the right amount of dreaminess.